It's time for my Journey to Un'Goro card review. It's out and it means it's time to look at all of the cards just before we start making loads of decks, loads of budget decks and just experimenting around really. So who's winning, who's losing, and of course we've got the standard rotation to think about as well. So if you're thinking of playing with any Blackrock Mountain, League of Explorers or Grand Tournament cards in Standard, then I'm afraid they won't work with this set unless you take them into Wild. But this is all about Standard, what I'm chatting about, just to narrow things down a bit. So in general, I think that Druid, Shaman, and Hunter are all going to be the big winners of this rotation and this expansion, and I do have my concerns about Priest and Paladin in particular, but also Rogue. I think the other three might be okay, but that's my gut feeling. So let's get started with Druid. I think Druid is moving towards, well, they're definitely supporting Beast Druid, which is good. They've got things that are labelled Beast, like you've got Verdant Longneck and Elder Longneck, which support that archetype. But most importantly, Druid is all centered around the quests. So quests are the new thing which are coming into the game, along with the new Adapt mechanic, and we're also getting the Elemental archetype. So they're like the big things that are coming. And quests are something that are going to shape how classes are played. So it's a bit interesting how they've done quests. It's a bit different to last year with the Old Gods card set, which basically gave you 4 neutral minions to build decks around. They were built around cards, but you could put them in any deck and decide how to build it from there. These quests are a bit more linear. They kind of shoehorn decks into certain archetypes, and there's both pros and cons for that. It gives every class an identity, but it also makes every class, it basically gives it less scope. It's a bit less creative. But regardless of my thoughts on that, Jungle Giants could actually be very good. This is potentially one of the best quests in the game, which is coming with Un'Goro. So summoning 5 minions with 5 or more attack isn't actually going to be too difficult with this expansion, with things like Shell Shifter coming out. Now Shell Shifter is one of the best cards that are coming to Druids, because not only is it going to work with this quest, it's also going to function as an anti-aggro card. So we have to premise all of our discussions about these cards from here with the idea that Jade Shaman will still be around probably, and we need to start thinking about Pirate Warrior as well. But not just Jade Shaman and Pirate Warrior, Jade Druid, which kind of undoes any kind of long control deck matchup that you're going to start thinking about, because Jade Druid in theory is going to infinitely go longer than that because of Jade Idol, that lovely little card that everyone loves so much. So those are 3 decks that I think are going to be quite oppressive after a couple of weeks, but in the first couple of weeks, it's just going to be fun to mess around with all of these expansions. So the Druid has a couple of options here, but I don't think anything's going to be better than that Jade Druid deck list that we have at the moment, but it will be fun to mess around with Jungle Giants and see if we can get out the minion that's going to set all of our Ramp Druid cards to 0. That sounds really fun to me. Hunter. Well, Hunter's a big winner from this expansion. Hunter hasn't really seen much play for a little while now, and I'd put that down to Pirate just being a better aggro mechanic. So what they're doing is they're basically solving a problem with an aggro Hunter deck or a mid-range Hunter deck with the quest called the Marsh Queen. Play 7 1-cost minions, and have made it quite easy, by the looks of it, to play lots of 1-cost minions. They've added a bunch of 1-costs that add more 1-costs to your hand, like Raptor Hatchling and the Flame Elemental that adds another Flame Elemental to your hand, the neutral one, and just basically all of the Hunter cards look playable. Obviously some of them are better than others, but even the Jeweled Macaw. Jeweled Macaw looks pretty good. It looks like something that you're going to see in every Hunter deck, because Web Spinner was in every Hunter deck, and that was a Death Rattle. This one is a Battle Cry, so it's going to happen immediately. I'll have a beast straight to my hand, thank you. And not only does that work on turn 1, it will also scale to the late game. It will also trigger your Marsh Queen, and it will hopefully bring out Queen Carnassa, which is then going to shuffle 15 1-drops into your deck that keep drawing cards, so it's a forever cycle, and it just means that you're never going to run out of cards, which sounds great to me. So it looks like they're going to be making Hunter a viable deck. Unfortunately, the way that they're doing that means that there's not going to be much difference in the way that Hunter decks are built, I think. Now, We do have a little bit of support for Control Hunter as well, like there's a trigger a friendly minion's death rattle here, Dynamancy becomes, you know, give your hero power +2/+2, but I just don't see Control Hunter working because it's never worked, so why should it now? Mage is the first big class to get elemental support, so they've got Pyros as their big legendary card. I'm not sure how I feel about this because it's just a 2/2 for 2 that then gives you a 6/6 for 6 that just becomes a 10/10 for 10. There's arguably some N'Zoth synergy there and everyone knows that I like N'Zoth very much, but besides that I'm not really sure. Open the Waygate is very exciting to me. Now it's going to take a while because you have to get the spells and then cast them, and obviously they're all going to be random spells because they're going to come off things like Babbling Book, which is give a random spell to your mage. We've also got things like Kabbalist's Tome, so when you finish that eventually you're going to get Time Warp, which gives you an extra turn for 5 mana. So this opens up some one-hit KO potential with Arcane Giant and Alexstrasza. Now how viable this deck is yet to be seen, but there's a very clear path there. It's just a bit of a bumpy road in order to get there. Now Blizzard have to be very careful with Open the Waygate and Mage in general for the next 2 years now, because if they add any more of these add a random spell to your hand, then it's just going to make Open the Waygate easier and it may open up OTKs in future. Something that I haven't touched on quite as much yet as well, the elemental mechanic. Now Mage does have water elemental, which should be getting the tag, so hopefully that will help. The elementals do rely on basically having a full deck of elementals. You're playing the elementals to get their effects off, so you need a chain of elementals every turn in order to make your deck overpowered, a bit like the way that dragons work with dragons in your hand. So there are a couple of powerful elementals in the late game, but I'm not entirely sure that elementals are consistent enough in order to make it into the meta game. Maybe some kind of tempo mage or some kind of OTK mage will happen. I'm a bit concerned about Paladin. Paladin is losing a couple of things, but not too much. But I don't feel like they're gaining much, and for a class that isn't played much at the moment anyway, I am a bit worried about Paladin. So the quest relies on playing spells on your minions and then giving you Galvadon, which itself is quite a risk. So playing 6 spells on your minions is a lot of investment in buff spells, and there aren't that many good buff spells. Now it depends on how Galvadon works as to how lenient I am with this quest. Now whether Galvadon can offer you stealth twice is important. So basically what I'm saying is, if it adapts 5 times, will it double up on the effects that you can't get 2 of? Will you pick Divine Shield and Stealth, for example, and then will it be smart enough not to offer you those options again? Because obviously you can't give a minion 2 times Divine Shield. So that will make Galvadon good or bad depending on how that works. Now I need to look into that and I will verify as soon as I know. Even if it doesn't work like that, you're doing a huge risk with this card, because playing buffs on minions has been historically not very consistent in Hearthstone, because there has been a lot of things like Hex, Silence, Polymorph, etc, all around the place. So I'd be a bit worried about investing too much into one minion, but maybe this is it. Maybe this is the card that's going to make buff Paladin good. Mid-range Paladin may struggle even with Light Fuse Stegodon. It's no Quartermaster. Adapting minions isn't as good as giving every minion +2/+2. Maybe there's room for a Control Paladin, but I don't think many of these cards besides a Sunkeeper Tarim is really going to enable that. Alright, let's talk about Priest. I'm a bit worried about Priest as well, because Priest is losing quite important stuff. So Priest is probably the biggest loser in terms of rotation, because Priest rely on dragons quite a bit in order to play. And Control Priest also relies on some cards that are rotating as well. So we're losing the Dragon Engine, we're losing Entomb, and we're also losing Excavated Evil, which makes Priest a little bit inconsistent from now. So what cards are we replacing that with? Well, we won't have Reno either, but how about Awaken the Makers? Summon 7 Death Rattle minions, get Amara Warden of Hope, which is going to give you 40 health when you play her. The question is, how easy is it to play 7 Death Rattle minions? And will it be worth the risk in a meta that maybe is defined by Jade Idol on the Druid Jade Golem list, or Pirate Warrior? I think I'm really worried. I'm not so worried about the aggro, because Priest maybe can deal with the aggro. Maybe just about, just long enough to get 7 Death Rattle minions that summon Amara and gives you 40 health. I'm worried about this matchup against things like Jade Druid that can go so long and just get bigger and bigger Jade Golems that kind of undo any progress that you make in the late game as a control priest. I feel like a Jade Golem deck is just going to outpace and outlast a control priest deck. So the matchup that it should have a chance in, I don't feel like it is going to do very well in. Although saying that, that is just one matchup. And against maybe other control decks and mid-range decks, a control priest of this style might be really good. Not sure how popular it will be, not sure how meta-defining it will be, but I think Awaken the Makers with N'Zoth and with Amara as the reward for it, and with these couple new Death Rattle cards, might actually just hold on and just be good enough to see Fringe play, but I don't think it's going to be a defining deck if Jade Druid sticks around, and Jade Druid isn't missing much. So I hate to be a downer on Priest, but I'm a bit worried even though all of these cards look really cool. Another class that I'm a bit worried about is Rogue. So Rogue is losing a couple of cards as well. We're losing Conceal, which means that it's going to be quite difficult to rely on Miracle Rogue in an as consistent way as before. And basically all of these cards rely on combos. So I'm a bit concerned, I am a bit concerned, because combo cards rely on your deck being very reliant on everything else in the deck. Now, we do have Gadgets on Auctioneer, and that is something that's quite important for Rogue if we're going for big combos and big finishers, but I just can't see the synergy here. A lot of it seems to clash, and it's going to be some kind of weird Rogue deck that we haven't figured out yet that prevails from all of this, I think. A bit like Oil Rogue back a couple of years ago, kind of just came out of nowhere. I'm not sure how good a tempo or aggro rogue might be, but that might be the way that the class is going with these kind of effects. It does look a bit inconsistent. I don't like the caverns below. I don't think the quest is, I don't think it's worth it. So playing 4 minions of the same name is fun, and I love the design that they've gone with for this, but I don't feel like the reward is very good. Playing Crystal Core and making all of your minions 5/5 doesn't seem like a thing that Rogue wants to do. In the late game, what's a bunch of 5/5s going to do against a 10/10 Jade Golem and an 11/11 Jade Golem and etc and etc, and by that point against Pirate Warrior you're probably already dead. But enough of my cynicism. I can see the potential, and I really want Rogue to be good because playing combo cards is really fun, and Vile Spine Slayer seems pretty fun. Alright, let's chat Shaman, the class that can do everything, and apparently now they can do elementals as well. To be fair to Shaman, they did have a couple of elementals before this set came along, and this is just building on that. So bear in mind that we've got Earth Elemental, Fire Elemental, and Unbound Elemental before we talk about all of these cards as well. And their big legendary, Calamus, Primal Lord, does rely on you playing an elemental the turn before. Now there are a bunch of elementals in the neutral set as well, but we also have Stone Sentinel to lead into Calamus, which might actually be quite good. Now, it's important to note that Aggro Shaman is losing a couple of tools, namely Tunnel Trog and the 3/4 Golem. Fucking, you know the one I'm talking about from the Grand Tournament. So, it's losing its aggro turn 1 and 2 drops, it's not losing its Jade Golems however, and I do wonder whether the Jade Golem Shaman is going to be better than the Elemental Shaman, but Elemental Shaman is shaping up to be something that's quite decent. I do like the support it has, and I think it's going to be an alright deck. I don't know whether it's going to be the best Shaman deck, but it certainly has promise with all of these Elemental cards, which seem to be quite good. Hot Spring Guardian, I think, is the best card in the Shaman set. Taunt, 2/4 Taunt on turn 3, brilliant, thank you very much. And Elementals seem to work as a bit more of a slow mid-range, or maybe even control deck, so it fits into that archetype. And Restore free health, brilliant, I'll have the free health or I'll give it to my minion. It looks like they're going to continue pushing the Murloc Shaman archetype now. Everything is awesome has actually left, but Unite the Murlocs is here to continue the memes, and it seems like it might actually be quite good with Mega Fin if you're running an aggro Shaman. Maybe Unite the Murlocs is the way to do it now, and this is something that can spiral out of control. It works in a similar way to the Hunter quest in that it benefits an aggro archetype that tends to run out of steam, and it gives you more steam to keep going and pushing until the end of the game. And bear in mind that Reno's rotating out, so we may see less healing potential, less control decks, which makes things like Murlocs and Face Hunter and, unfortunately, Pirate Warrior potentially better. So Warlock continues this kind of divide between a slow kind of handlock style and this discard or zoolock style. Discard is starting to be able to go into 2 different archetypes, it looks like, and Clutch Mother Zavus is the legendary that's going to enable it. And then we've got things like Lakari Sacrifice, which start pushing that slow handlock control style deck, because it's going to give you infinite value with the Nether Portal that's going to summon 2 free 2s every single turn. Obviously it's super slow, but in a control matchup that's really valuable. Discarding 6 cards as a Warlock isn't that difficult, and I think that if you can get the game to slow down enough, this card is going to be really good. Now whether Warlock can do this without Reno Jackson is going to be really interesting to see. And finally, Warrior. Warrior seems to be pushing in a control warrior kind of style in terms of the new cards that we're getting here. I think Blizzard is trying to quickly skim over the fact that Pirate Warrior is still around, but the quest, Fire Plume's Heart, play 7 Taunt Minions, could be pretty good if we're in a control meta. So 7 Taunt Minions are naturally going to slow down the aggro decks. You're going to get Sulfurus, which is a 4-2 weapon for free, and then you get your Hero Power, which is deal 8 damage like Ragnaros to a random enemy minion. So later in the game that's going to be really good, and that is definitely a win condition. Summoning 7 Taunt Minions may be tricky, but there's quite a few Taunt Minions that are coming out of this set. 4 in fact for Warrior. I'd say at least half of those are pretty playable, like Tarlord. Tarlord might be just about playable in a kind of ladder style Taunt Warrior, which has the win condition of just dealing 8 damage over and over and over again. The question is whether it will be outpaced and outvalued by Jade Golems again, whether it will be quick enough to beat Pirates and aggro style decks. Again, I think it might just hold on if it can get enough early game taunts out. Warrior will be an interesting one to watch, because obviously we're going to be saying goodbye to Grim Patron and a couple of other Warrior tools, so whether the Taunt Warrior can stand up with this big reward at the end will be really interesting to see. And that brings me to the end of the class overview. So like I said, I think the big winners of this one are Hunter, Shaman still, and most likely it's going to be Druid as well. I think they're going to be the big 3 to watch out for. Bit worried about Paladin, Rogue, Priest, and potentially Warlock as well, but I guess we'll see how that one pans out. I think there's a bunch of really interesting cards in this expansion, a bunch that I didn't touch on, a bunch of elementals, and a bunch of adapt minions that I barely even got a chance to talk about, but I didn't want this video to go on forever, and I wanted to get to playing Ungoro, and I know you guys do as well. So I'll be back very soon with my first Ungoro budget deck, and because expansions are becoming much more simplified, it means it's going to be much easier, and by that I mean we're getting rid of adventures, because adventures aren't being made anymore. It's going to be much easier to make budget decks, and it's going to be so much easier to follow along as well. Now I'm excited to see what I can do with this new expansion. Old Gods was so exciting last year when loads of cards rotated out and we got 130 odd back in. We get to do it all over again, and I'm so pumped. So if you're pumped as well, be sure to subscribe to Zoid Gaming and hit that little notification button to get a little vibration on your phone every time I upload a video. And of course, if you enjoyed this, hit like, I really appreciate it, and I will endeavour to make more. And I will see you very shortly. I'm going to go and open some Ungoro packs now. Goodbye.